Today on Studio One, learn how one mother is turning her challenge into a blessing for many. Also, learn how human behavior changes during natural disasters. And it's not all digital. We'll show you how that scratchy sound is finding more listeners.
From the University of North Dakota, this is Studio One, celebrating 25 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Studio One. I'm Monty Cashel.
And I'm Ann Hook.
Well, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that says we need about 2 or 3 more weeks of winter.
I can't do it anymore, Monty. I need to have some green.
You know what? We have green on the show today. We're going to have an expert gardener come on, and she's going to show us how to take plants, grow them in our home so that we can get that gardening fix even while the snow is still flying outside.
So she has quite the green thumb for gardening.
Absolutely. We get to show it off today. Also on the show, parenting a child with special needs has its rewards and its challenges. Find out how one mother is using her own experience to help pave the way for others.
And the recent North Dakota oil boom has received national attention. Later, we will talk to a writer who gives an outside perspective on this important time in North Dakota history.
But first, here's today's news with Allie Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. A charter bus took a deadly turn after rolling over on a Dallas area turnpike Thursday morning. 2 deaths resulted from the crash while 36 people were transported to hospitals. The bus was northbound to Oklahoma casinos when it hit a barrier and swerved across lanes of traffic. It struck a concrete median before overturning in a grassy area. The charter bus was the only vehicle harmed in the accident. A team was sent by the National Transportation Safety Board to investigate the wreck scene. A threat of nuclear missile attacks from North Korea has been causing some concern in the international community. One of the rockets was raised in an upright firing position, but now U.S. officials say it has been tucked back into its launcher. They say this could signify testing of the equipment rather than an imminent threat. The weapon allegedly has a range of over 2,000 miles. Technology has caused huge amounts of outdated electronics to be tossed out. Piles of old televisions and monitors are being stacked high with nowhere to go. Over past years, broken monitors and TVs were being recycled for a profit. The big glassy funnels inside, also known as cathode ray tubes, were melted down and turned into new ones. Flat screen technologies has made those monitors and televisions obsolete, which decreased the demand for the recycled tubes of glass. Small recycles are said to be in over their heads, but many plants still attempt to salvage the other recyclable parts.
Well, they recycle and they tear them apart, save the precious metals, destroy, recycle even the plastics and everything that they can be recycled.
10 years ago, recyclers were paid more than $200 a ton for the glass from these monitors. Now they have to pay that same amount to get rid of it. A new invention has made it possible for wheelchair users to stand upright and even walk. The exoskeleton, or EXO, is a bionic wearable robot that fits around the user. It's run by a motorized frame and computer. The EXO started as a military project to help soldiers lift heavier loads. The commercial version was recently made available for use in hospitals and rehabilitation centers to help paraplegics stand up and walk. The CEO of the EXO says by 2014, his invention should be available for personal use in people's everyday lives. When a child is born, their life to come is a mystery. For one family, their mystery turned into a pleasant surprise.
This is Presley.
The boss.
She's 6 years old, has many dance moves, and loves to play games. On the day that Presley was born, the Hudsons didn't get the typical congratulations of their newborn baby girl.
The attending physician was very blunt and hurried and just said, well, number 1, she needs a full blood transfusion right now. Number 2, she's going to need heart surgery. The cardiologist is on his way. And number 3, she has Down syndrome. Here's a pamphlet.
Being told their baby had this condition was frightening news.
I mean, I could feel my knees buckle and the color come out of my skin, and it was really a shock. And I felt so many questions and fears, and it was a really tough time.
You had a little owie inside of you, so the doctors fixed you.
Having gone through the experience of being told your baby has Down syndrome, Becca wanted to help other parents through her own stories. She began to write a book titled What I Want You to Know.
And I just wrote very simple little verses. Each page has a little simple message on it, something that I have learned from Presley.
The CDC estimates that about 1 of every 700 babies born in the United States each year is born with Down syndrome. Becca will be the first to tell you that Presley's condition has forever impacted their lives. However,
you know, your child's going to be an individual and you're going to face some challenges and it is going to change your life.
But Becca says it will change it for the better.
She's doing everything, you know, she's talking, she's reading, she's happy, and that's really all that matters.
And that is what the Hudsons want you to know.
Rebecca's book has been purchased by numerous Down syndrome associations in Michigan, Georgia, Massachusetts, and Ohio. And that's the news for now. Monty and Ann.
Thanks a lot, Allie. Well, you know, it's April showers bring May flowers, but it's been April snow showers in most of the United States.
And we're going to hear more about some odd weather that's hitting the Panhandle State by Kellen Peters over in the weather studio.
Thanks, Ann and Monty. Yeah, I could not have said it any better. We're still talking about snow and we're in the middle of April. That's exactly what did happen through a large part of the country. Now, we have some satellite imagery for you just showing exactly what happened. The beginning of the storm happened up Iowa, Minnesota, over in Wisconsin. This is all your thunderstorms throughout the area. But then this pink area, that's your mix between rain and snow. And that white area, that's your snow. That eventually moved on into the area. But keep an eye on down in the Kansas, central part of the United States. Watch this storm just flare up. It's a real strong convection going on in the atmosphere. It's going to flare up. You see that nice squall line in the area. Now, in front of the storm, it was around 70 degrees down in Kansas and Missouri. But as this storm continued to move on, there's a very tight temperature gradient, and therefore behind that storm started turning into that rain-snow mixture and eventually snow just in a matter of hours. So crazy how much this low pressure system could produce for this time of the year. But you're probably wondering how or why did and how did this all happen? Well, it started because of this cold front. So we have our warm air around that 70-degree temperatures that was over in Kansas, and eventually that cold front just came right into the area. With that warm air being less dense, it was forced up by that cold air that is coming into the area. And if that warm air has any moisture at all, it's going to continue to rise until it becomes saturated. Now, the atmosphere did have a lot of convection with it, therefore flared up our thunderstorms, and with that cold air continuing to move, it changed all that rain falling to eventually snow. So crazy phenomenon of weather going on in the middle of April. Now, seeing any precipitation at all in the forecast, you can see a nice dividing line of average cutting off all the way from the Rocky Mountains, moving out west. Drier than average conditions can be expected over this next week. On the other side, wetter than average conditions over the next week. But for temperature, probably wondering when is it going to warm up? Well, slowly but surely working on it, but it is still going to be colder than average from Canada and the Midwest region. Large chunk of the country is going to see that. But hopefully you're going on vacation over to California or down in Florida, because that's where you see your warmer temperatures. Now, eventually that snow is going to melt, which might bring some flooding. So we have a weather question here for you. In the last 10 years on average, flooding costs the U.S. how many dollars annually? Our answers range anywhere from $500 million to $5 billion. And we have a story about that coming up a little bit later in the show.
All right, that's a lot of dollar signs, Kellen.
That's a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, flooding does cost a lot, especially the cleanup. That's the big thing.
All that mud.
Yes, a lot of mud. All right, well, let's turn now to some sports highlights and Brian Gendro.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. Spring is the time we begin to shed our winter coats, just as Mother Nature sheds her winter snow. This year, the snow is taking longer to leave, causing an unusual problem for a particular sport. Winter always seems to last a little longer for baseball players. They eagerly anticipate the day when the grass begins to show and they can head outdoors. This year's seasonal transition is taking much longer, and teams are forced to stay inside. Practicing in a gym may be warmer, but it has its downsides. Limited practices affect players physically and mentally.
I'd say probably the two biggest areas that we have a problem with will be taking fly balls that are above 30 feet high. That's a tough thing to do. And then the other one is taking ground balls.
Coach Dodson says he hopes the team can get outside in a few weeks. So far, the average snow depth for April in the upper Midwest is 5.1 inches. It's now time for the Studio One Sports Trivia question. How tall is the Green Monster at Fenway Park in Boston? You have 4 choices there, and the answer to that one will be coming up later in the show. That's the sports. Monty and Ann?
Thanks, Brian. Jackie Robinson was one of the first African-American Major League Baseball players. His struggles and triumphs in the big leagues are highlighted in a new drama. We'll preview that film.
Also, some believe North Dakota's beauty lies in the silence of wide open spaces. Next, a writer for the New York Times will tell us how his experience on the prairie compares to life in the Big Apple.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
Awarded the overall excellence in cable TV by the Northwest Broadcast News Association, this is Studio One.
North Dakota has been viewed as a frontier of opportunity. Throughout history, the state has profited from its natural resources. New York Times writer Chip Brown embarked into the North Dakota oil basin to account life inside the boom. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today from Manhattan.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, well, to start it off, of all the possible story angles, why did the Times assign you the North Dakota oil boom?
They wanted to write about the oil boom, and they wanted somebody to write about it. And they asked me why. They asked me. I don't really know. I think it's something I could do because I've written about landscapes before and energy before. So, and also I'm interested in North Dakota, and I don't think many of their writers are. So. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea really why. They just said, do you want to write about it? They asked me in November, and I said, you don't really want to write about this in November? I said, no, I would kind of like to wait till the spring.
Okay, so when did you actually come out and travel?
And I first came in April last year, and then I came again in May. I would have come a third time, but they ran out of money, so it's not cheap traveling in western North Dakota.
Was there any preconceived ideas of what life out here in North Dakota would be like?
No, I had no idea really, and so I was open to whatever it was. Excuse me. I was waiting to see what it was, so that's why I was kind of interested.
How about life inside the oil basin?
It's definitely different. I think they say there's 2 states. There's the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state, and life in the oil basin is in flux. So it's really it changes week to week. I mean, people don't know their neighbors. They barely recognize the road sometimes. You can't do what you used to do. My favorite story was they're trying to keep the dust down in I think it's Williams County or McKenzie County, and they're trying all these compounds to keep the dust down. And they tried a soybean-based oil, but it made the roads taste so good that the cows would come down and started to eat the roads. So that wasn't going to work. But that's the sort of little details that I was looking for, was things that suggest how a boom affects a culture.
So in your article, you describe North Dakota as a frontier. Like, in what way?
Well, it's not the most original description. It's the kind of frontier it's a secondary frontier. It's the main wave of settlement passed over here 100 years ago, and this is the resettlement or the refrontiering of the place of the land. It's the frontier. There's also frontiers where places have been neglected or overlooked, or they fall into economic disuse. So it was really more. This is a frontier of rediscovery rather than the initial discovery. So,
what was it like seeing firsthand the effects of this boom?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious effects of you're going to get crushed between two large, 15-ton trucks, and you can't find a place to stay, and there's mud everywhere, and there's just the tactics of getting around are difficult. And also, I happened to come during one of the biggest rainstorms they've had in a long time. So I originally wanted to drive down US 85 and sort of use the road as my main line through the oil fields, but it was raining so hard, if I got out of the car, I was soaked within 30 seconds. So I had to abandon that as an idea for the story.
Well, one of the things I appreciate most about your article is how you really incorporate the state's past. How important do you feel the state's history reflects this current economic boom?
Well, the history shapes all of people's reactions to the boom. I mean, North Dakota, they wouldn't embrace the oil boom so unequivocally, and if they hadn't had so many failures of booms in the past. It's, the dust of the 30s is still blowing around in people's memories. So they look at any kind of economic influx as a blessing, and they tend to mitigate or minimize the disadvantages.
So what was your favorite part of being in the prairie of North Dakota?
Actually, it was getting out of the car and staring out into 100 miles of empty land. I mean, I live in a city where you can't walk 5 feet without having to veer away from somebody. And here you could stand for hours, and at least not in downtown Williston, but if outside of the city in small towns like Tioga and Crosby, and seeing those small towns and seeing the boarded up buildings, and then the new life that was there also was. It's just it's strangely peaceful and kind of inspiring, and you can hear nature again. You kind of almost hear the grass growing, and birds, and the stars creaking.
I know,
overhead.
it really is beautiful.
It is really surprisingly beautiful, and people think of it as this sort of nowhere in no account flyover land, but actually it's extraordinarily beautiful. And you can hear that, you can see that in Willa Cather's writing. If you read her descriptions of Nebraska, it's incredibly beautiful, and she evokes that immensity and that silence.
Well, thank you, and again on the success of your article and for appearing on the show today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Coming up, many people react differently in high-stress situations. We'll introduce you to one man who studies human behavior in natural disasters. Also, earbuds and fancy headphones are common ways to hear music today. We'll show you one man who prefers a more nostalgic experience. That's next.
Studio One closed captioning is underwritten in part by Options, your disability information source.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight.
is the size of the fight in the woman.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
Your future depends on this moment. Take the path that leads to your future.
It has been 67 years since Jackie Robinson started to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. This true story of an American legend is about to be reintroduced. Chadwick Boseman plays the role of Jackie Robinson in the new movie 42. The story takes place on the baseball field in the 1940s. Jackie Robinson was the first black male to sign a contract to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He struggled when coaches from other teams wanted to forfeit games. They didn't want a black man on their field. Jackie soon became a living hero when he is pressured to be a fine gentleman and a good athlete at all times. Hank Aaron played against Jackie for the last 3 or 4 years of his career.
And he wanted everybody to know that, until we understood that just because we had made it to the big leagues, that there was other things that we had to do in order to help our race move forward.
Jackie's wife Rachel says there is a lesson in the movie for young people. She says we are able to use strong relationships to get through terrible times and still make a difference. 42 opens in theaters April 12th with a PG-13 rating. Now it's time to look at the events happening in your area. In this digital era, it's easy to download music with the click of a mouse, but some music buffs are looking for a bigger experience.
The current generation is so used to listening to music stuck directly into their ear canals. It becomes a question to the young people today, what is vinyl?
Vinyl? I don't know what it means.
Fake designer coats.
Think of music like an old vinyl record.
What looks like a platter is 12 inches in diameter and is marked with small grooves. This is a vinyl record. Austin's first go-around with vinyl began in an unlikely place.
I was working at a plastic bag factory, and I met this friend, and we were always trading music and DVDs and stuff like that. And one day he had a record that he wanted me to listen to, but he only had it on vinyl.
These shiny black pieces of plastic just may be turning the tables on more modern ways of listening to music.
You can pick up an album and you can actually sit there and look at it and you read the liner notes, pull out the sleeves, just have more fun with the CD is just kind of a little tiny thing.
Some people just aren't content with listening to music through inexpensive white earbuds. For them, authentic vinyl just sounds right.
We like the sound quality, like the little pops and clicks, and sometimes the record gets warped over time and it adds little surprises into the music.
This may be the dawn of a new age in sonic fidelity. Only time will tell. But for Austin, putting on a record is a ritual, one that's so much more than just hitting play. I'm Stephanie Shire reporting for Studio One.
Vinyl sales have grown for 5 consecutive years with 4.6 million records sold in 2012. Many popular bands such as the Black Keys, Mumford & Sons, and Adele are starting to push their music on vinyl. Coming up, hockey doesn't have to be played in winter or even on ice. We'll take you to one academy that teaches hockey skills to youth year-round. That story plus news, sports, and weather in the next half hour of Studio One.
Closed captioning for Studio One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
Life is busy, but many professionals are finding ways to advance their career with a Master's in Business Administration at the University of North Dakota. Students attend UND online and on campus. The program is nationally recognized and emphasizes one-on-one with faculty. Find the title you deserve. Enroll today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
From the University of North Dakota, celebrating 25 years, this is Studio One.
Welcome back to Studio One.
Thanks for joining us today.
Well, Monty, we all like to have fun at work.
Yeah, it's good to have fun at work, then you like going to work.
Well, we've seen that these companies such as Google and YouTube, they're kind of doing a more unconventional way of having fun. They're putting
pits and
swimming pools.
Slides instead of escalators.
And what they're finding is that having these new inventive ways are making their workers more productive and more creative. So we went out and wanted your thoughts on, is it important to play at work?
All right, and we'll get your answers in the next 30 minutes. Also on Studio One, many people give money to starving children in other countries. One organization provides the chance to send meals directly to those in need.
Also, combining two elements to create one compound is common in science. We'll show you one girl who shares her knowledge of chemistry with a young audience.
And it's hard for many gardeners to wait for those perfect, warm planting temperatures. We'll talk to a gardening expert who says you don't have to wait. But first, here's today's news with Ali Strand.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. 2 young boys returned home after being abducted by their parents. The grandmother says that all the boys knew is that they were on an adventure. The grandparents gained custody of the children on April 2nd. The next morning, the father tied the grandmother up and sped away with the boys and the family dog. After uniting with the mother, the family sailed to Cuba. They were found on their boat in a Havana marina. A gunman in financial troubles held 4 firefighters hostage in suburban Atlanta. The situation began at around 3:40 p.m. Wednesday. The suspect was killed in an exchange of gunfire between him and law enforcement. A police official says that this is not how they wanted situations to turn out, but it was ultimately the decision of the gunman. New gun control legislation crossed a major hurdle in the Senate on Thursday. The bill received bipartisan support with a 68 to 31 vote. A handful of Republicans voted in favor of its proposed measure to expand background checks. However, a group of conservative senators have vowed to slow down the bill's passage by offering multiple amendments. Law enforcement officials are starting to crack down on cell phone theft, with new plans taking place. The black market is predicted to take a turn for the worst. Cell phone theft is currently the United States' most steadily growing crime. Many of these stolen phones are reported in major metropolitan areas such as New York City. They saw a 40% increase in thefts in 2012. A national database of stolen cell phones is currently in the process of being made public. In the future, it will become more difficult to resell a phone that has been stolen because a person can simply report their serial number to a national list. Once on the list, the phone cannot be reactivated. It's no secret that excess sugar can be bad for anyone's health, but a new study shows that sugary drinks are linked to 180,000 obesity-related deaths every year. Among the 35 countries studied by researchers at Harvard University, they had the highest death rate. The average citizen there consumes 24 ounces of sweetened beverages each day. The United States ranked third. Nutritionists say the body does not detect fullness after the consumption of a sugary drink. This is the main reason why they can lead to obesity. In a country where fast food restaurants and junk food are staples, it can be hard to imagine a world where people aren't getting enough to eat. One woman is helping to give food service a whole new meaning.
On a weekend where many were cooling off from their busy weeks, these people were heating up. Thousands put on their dancing shoes and hairnets to lend a helping hand. 3 years ago, Jody Storhog went to volunteer with Feed My Starving Children, a nonprofit based in Minnesota. She left inspired to cultivate a knowledge of world hunger back home in Grand Forks.
I really believed that I live in a community that would get around this. So it wasn't something I felt like I had to do by myself because I knew that my community would be all about this.
The organization says more than 18,000 children die from hunger or a hunger-related disease each day. This is one child every 5 seconds. And in the last decade, the number of hungry people in the world has broken the 1 billion mark, half of this number being children. Feed My Starving Children aims to serve up nutritious, easily digestible meals to kids in over 70 countries.
God calls us to feed the starving in our world, and this is just a way to very effectively answer that call.
The 22-cent meals are made up of veggies, rice, soy, and a chicken-flavored vitamin mixture. Jody says helping can be as simple as skipping your daily trip to Starbucks one morning. The $4 spent on a morning latte would feed a starving child for over 2 weeks.
I think we are made to care about people. I think that's how we're made. And when we're not doing it, we become unhealthy. And so I think to be a healthier person, kind of helping other people gets us there.
These volunteers busted a move to package over 400,000 meals. And it's all because people like Jody understand that in order to cook up big change, we have to go one spoonful at a time. This is Olivia Fox reporting for Studio One.
After only 3 events held in Grand Forks, Jody and her team have hit the 1 million meal mark. And that's the news. Monty and Ann?
Thanks a lot, Allie. 1 million meal mark. That's a lot of food.
The story is really inspirational.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go back again to Kellen Peters over in the weather studio about some odd weather that's touching down on Colorado.
Yeah, thanks, Ann and Monty. Yeah, the whole Colorado, Wyoming area, they're not missing out on the fun either. They experienced some pretty severe weather as well. Now, over a foot of snow was dumped in parts of Wyoming and Colorado as this storm started out as an ice storm and then eventually turned into snow. Now, several hundred people were without power due to the strong winds that happened in the area. Also, over hundreds of flights cancellations did occur. The good thing, however, that this area was having a drought at this time, so this is just what the doctor ordered for the state of Wyoming and the areas around it. So we're going out to Wyoming, just exactly what happened. Now the storm did cause parts of interstates 25 and 80 to close. Over 30 accidents were reported, winds over 70 miles an hour. But your winner with the highest snow totals was Casper, Wyoming, with 14 inches of snow. With the area seeing a lot of snow, can create some worries and whatsoever, and question if you are in good hands should a flood occur.
Spring is in the air, and one natural disaster always comes to mind in the Red River Valley: flooding. It can be a serious disaster that people can overlook and take lightly.
This does come about, the next flooding. People in Fargo filling sandbags and getting ready for it. There's preparation for you. But not everybody will be prepared.
Dr. Tobin says people in the face of a natural disaster go through many behavioral changes. With these changes, they must make drastic decisions.
And we find the same thing with flooding in this country. Do I leave or don't I? And hurricanes coming from Florida, do I leave or don't I? Even though we say you've got to leave, many people do not. Now, why is that? Isn't it exciting to find out why that might be the case?
Residents in the Red River Valley have high risks of flooding. Dr. Tobin says they must adapt to the conditions and be prepared for the next disaster.
That flooding will take place again. And if you put things back exactly as they were before, you're going to have the same problem in the years to come.
If people are better informed about the risks, they can handle natural disasters such as flooding more effectively. With photographer Kellen Peters, this is Riley Brustel reporting for Studio One Weather.
If we're going to continue to talk about flooding, it's going to bring us back to our weather question of the week, and is over the last 10 years on average, flooding costs the U.S. how many dollars annually? Answers are $100 million all the way up to $5 billion. Answers C, $3 billion. And it's important to note that all 50 states are subject to flash flooding. So once that spring severe weather season comes around, it's important to keep an eye out for that to happen.
All right, thanks, Kellen.
Thank you, my pleasure.
That is a lot of dough for some high water.
Yeah, well, nobody likes flooding, that's for sure. But we do like sports, and Brian Gendro is here to serve some up for us.
Thanks, Monty and Ann. Youth sports are not only more competitive than ever, but they hold more participants as well. One place is helping young hockey players take their game to the next level.
This is the house that Ralph built. A man from humble beginnings, Ralph Engelstad was a self-made multi-millionaire. He passed away in 2002, but his realistic approach to life lives on. So when you have dreams like this,
I'm 9 and I want to get drafted to the Minnesota Wild.
You need a suitable office to get your work done year-round.
Always when we can train on the ice, we do that because there's no mimicking the ice, but we feel like we have the next best tool in the skating treadmill because we can skate, stick handle, we can go in reverse with it and do shooting with it as well.
Definitely helped my hockey ability with my skating form and the fun games we played.
And having the capacity to show kids in the mirror what they're doing on their skating stride and what we want to do to get the most out of it, we think it's one of the best things to help kids.
The director of the Hockey Academy is no stranger to the sport or the program.
Logan. Try to keep that chest up a little bit more.
Carl Gehrig was a two-time All-American at the University of North Dakota and was the goaltender on the school's last national championship team in 2000. A few years ago, he left the crease he was accustomed to give back to the sport he loves.
2, 1. Good job. Here we go, Jaden. One of the best things is just getting to know the young kids. You really have such an opportunity to make an impression on them, not only in hockey, but in life, too.
It's the hope of Carl and the rest of the staff that the hard work taught at the Hockey Academy could one day help one of these young men achieve their own dream.
The Hockey Academy will take players of nearly all ages and skill levels. The synthetic ice they use is a solid polymer material designed for metal skate blades. Now the answer to this week's Studio One Sports Trivia question: how tall is the Green Monster at Fenway Park in Boston? The answer is C, 37 feet 2 inches. The next closest one is Safeco Field in Seattle, which is only 23 feet. And that's the sports. Monty and Ann?
Thank you, Brian. It's safe to say we'd all like to work to be fun. Some jobs are integrating games and activities to break up the workday. We wanted your thoughts on whether you'd like to see your job incorporate fun perks into your daily routine, and your answers are still to come.
Also, condensation, evaporation, and chemical reactions are terms familiar to chemists. We'll show you one college student who shares her expertise with an eager audience.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it. 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
At the University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, classes have real-life application. Mentors guide students. Our work improves quality of life by answering tough questions with creativity and innovation. The University of North Dakota College of Engineering and Mines, training tomorrow's engineering and geology experts today.
What does cancer look like? What about diabetes, heart disease? Medical laboratory professionals are a vital link in the treatment of disease and maintenance of health. They investigate clues found in the body that will direct patient care. The University of North Dakota's laboratory science programs are some of the most innovative, far-reaching, fully accredited programs in the nation. The UND School of Medicine and Health Sciences can help you become one of the few who see beneath the surface.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development. My business plan includes marketing strategies, legal documents, and a budget. My startup became possible through mentorship, hands-on experience, and learning from experts in the field. The Center for Innovation has contributed to more than 400 University of North Dakota student startups. Come with an idea. Leave with a business.
From the University of North Dakota, celebrating 25 years. This is Studio One.
Eruptions can be a scary situation. We met up with a group who loves the idea of controlled experiments, even if it includes a minor explosion or two.
The rag from getting burnt.
Few things are more fulfilling than watching a little girl's eyes light up when a new discovery is made. Today is Anna's very first Chemistry Fun Day.
Emily, could you pop the balloon if you put too much dry ice in it?
In this situation, Emily has all the answers. That is, unless Anna has an overloaded amount of curiosity.
Since you added more CO2 into this one than this one, and this one was already yellow, it's good just to continue making it lighter.
Emily is part of a chemistry group from the University of North Dakota. College students like her help kids get excited about science.
We picked Emily, and she guided us through everything and told us what to do and helped us out.
Emily says their group interacts in many ways with kids in the community.
With the middle schools and high schools, we go there and help judge science fair experiments, or we help perform experiments there. So we just do a lot to help with both the community and with the university.
Organizers say the little kids aren't the only ones learning from this experience.
My favorite part is watching the excitement of not only the ones that are in elementary and middle school, but the ones that are at UND, because they interact together so well.
Anna says the best part of the day was when she got to experiment on her own.
Cool, look at it. It's like moving around like a car.
Through the eyes of a scientist or an 11-year-old girl, the excitement of new discoveries will continue to push science forward. With photographer Alex Stadnick, I'm Amanda Cope reporting for Studio One.
Chemistry Fun Day takes place every year right around springtime at the University of North Dakota. There are about 30 4th to 6th graders that signed up this year. Anna is one of those 4th graders. CNN reports some workplaces are jumping on the trend of making work fun. The idea is that play at work could increase morale. Stimulating your brain in this way might help creativity and build teamwork. The idea was fully embraced at tech companies like Google and YouTube. The Google Corporation offers things like swimming pools and ball pits for their employees. Now, industries in food and marketing are testing out the theory. We wanted your thoughts on if it's important to play at work.
I don't have a lot of time to play games at work. We enjoy the patience, we enjoy each other's company, but as far as being distracted by other things, it doesn't work in that environment.
It's important to have fun at work because it makes work more enjoyable and gives you better satisfaction when you're working.
I feel like when you're in a better mood and having fun at work, you work better.
I think it's important that people have a balance, and there's a fine line between playing and losing productivity.
You spend 8 hours a day and 40 plus hours a week, so you need to have fun and enjoy what you're doing.
Absolutely important to have fun at work because you have to enjoy what you do, and if you don't, then life's too short to not do something that you enjoy.
As long as it's on your own time or at a designated time for a break. Otherwise, if it's cutting into productivity, no employer is going to want to pay you for playing.
A comment from our Facebook page from Denver. Google does a fabulous job of incorporating work and play. I think it's an important aspect that many companies lose sight of. Christy from Plymouth, Minnesota says, yes, I got a lot more satisfied and less disgruntled when we started goofing around a bit at work. Still to come, winter can keep you from planting your garden early. Our next guest has tips on how to exercise your green thumb in cold winter.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce guests, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it.
This scene is familiar, but you and your friends are at risk. 1 in 3 Americans will die from heart disease or stroke. Think about it, 1 in 3. Every day, more than 2,000 Americans die from cardiovascular disease. The Million Hearts Initiative works to prevent 1 million heart attacks and strokes. Understand the risks, get active, and reduce sodium and trans fats in your diet. It's a silent killer, but now is the time to take control of your health. Learn more about making a heart-healthy future.
My doctor tells me to play outside every day.
I see a physician assistant in my rural clinic. I'm glad that she's here.
But healthcare is changing.
Rural North Dakota communities face workforce shortages, particularly in primary care. The University of North Dakota School of Medicine and Health Sciences addresses the state's healthcare needs by educating the next generation of healthcare professionals. We advocate for improved health in rural communities.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
Jump-starting your garden early may be helpful for later in the summer. Transferring those starter plants is a part of the process. Master gardener and frequent guest on our show, Darlene Shea, is here to show us how to get our garden going. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much for having me again.
So tell us, how are you staying sane in this really cold spring?
Well, we're very lucky because there's heat in the greenhouse, so we still already have things that are blooming and growing and things like that. We can work in shirt sleeve out there.
Mm-hmm. So it's the beginning of the season to start growing plants. When is the right time to start?
This is a good time typically to have your garden plants started if you're going to start some versus buying them as starters that are already finished already. So it's really just kind of pre-plan what you want in your garden. Certain things you sow in directly into the soil and other things you want to start. So as an example, for the tomatoes would be one that you want to start because the season, usually they're 65, 70 days to bearing and you want to get them going.
Well, let's get going.
All right, let's get going. I wanted to kind of show today that you're not really limited by anything but your imagination as far as what to plant in. So this is a mushroom container that I've put holes in the bottom to make sure it drains. Put in as easy as a coffee filter. Throw some soil into here and take and lay your seeds in. These are actually, this is always interesting to me because these tiny little seeds are tomato seeds and they're going to grow into something like this as a tomato plant. So once you get this in, just kind of lay, like in this container I would probably lay about 4, 5 seeds in there for germination. Take a piece of plastic wrap, lay it over the top after you water it.
And so is that like a little mini greenhouse then?
Yes, then set it in the sun or under some grow lights and then the moisture will come up. It's really a nice germination. And one thing that I just found that really works well is eggshells that you fill with dirt. There's protein in your egg whites. So leave that in there. Lay your seed in and take and ready to go. Leave it right in the container
So then
and
you
take the plant, take the egg, plant the entire shell.
Really?
It's wonderful. It gives you protein in the soil.
So that doesn't constrict the root ball or anything like that? It'll bust right through it? Or?
Absolutely.
So where is it that you get the soil in this very cold winter?
We always bring our soil. We use container mix. It's very important when you're growing things in containers to use a container mix. Because it's a lighter soil, it's got your perlite, your vermiculite, your soil, your peat moss. It's all in there. So you don't have to worry about amending the soil at all. But today we're going to, these are some tomatoes that we had started. These are Roma tomatoes. Now, Roma is one that's kind of known to be your salsa tomato. And you can see it's pretty well rooted. This one kind of was a bonus plant because there's 2, so we're going to just take and break this apart.
How fragile are the roots? I mean, you're just
they're
kind
not too bad,
you're kind of just opening it up
just
there.
Rip her up. So we'll take this plant, and we have to move it to a larger container because, number one, there was 2 of them, but also it's not going to grow here much longer without constricting itself, and then it doesn't get much height. So take and move it into your new container like this, and pat it down and let it go, and now we've got 2 plants.
Sure. And how do you know when it's time to move it? I mean, they looked like the root ball was pretty,
pretty intense on that one.
Yeah.
Here's what you do. Once you've planted your seed, typically 10 to 14 days to germination. After that, your plant will look something like this, depending on what you're growing it in, your root system. Once you have 3 leaves on your plant, you can then move it up to a larger container.
Okay.
So we've taken a plant like this and we'll move it now into this 4-inch pot.
I see.
And then it just flourishes from there.
And you've got some pretty creative planters. I see there's some pretty good-looking shoes over here.
We got some high heels, we got some pink boots.
That's correct.
And so where do you find things like this? I guess, how do you think to put dirt and flowers in shoes? Is that
well, I have realized that the only thing that you're restricted by as far as your planting is your imagination. You seriously can plant in just about everything. The shoes, as an example, were a friend bought them for a wedding, and they were shoes that weren't very comfortable, so she said, here, you can have these to plant. And the boots came in 2 different sizes. There's a child out there that has 2 different sizes, so I got the other 2. And things like that, but your thrift stores, garage sales, friends.
Sure.
We plant in purses, we plant in bathtubs, we plant in all sorts of things, right down to a toilet we've planted for a customer.
Okay. So you go on to talk about, you use a lot of examples, but tell me, what is the craziest planter that you've used?
I think the toilet was probably the craziest because there's just something psychological about having your toilet in the front yard and having it full of flowers.
And you own a nursery and you plant things in different planters and sell to people then too?
That's correct.
What's
Most
their
of-
reaction when they see things like this?
These are really a fun thing. You know, we do a lot of chairs where we take find the old wooden chairs and we take the bottoms off and put in some window screen and plant in there. You set that on your front porch or patio and set your boots next to it, whether it's your boots or your child's or your husband's work boots.
Yeah, you can make it personal.
Yes, absolutely. I had one lady whose husband was deployed to Afghanistan, and she planted his old boots to remind her every day.
What a great idea.
So it's just really fun stuff.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show again and showing us one more tip for gardening.
You're very welcome.
All right, thanks, Darlene. You're watching Studio One from the University of North Dakota. We'll be back right after this.
Closed captioning for Studio One is underwritten in part by NDAD, helping others to help themselves.
It's not the size of the woman in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the woman.
Most people don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. My time clock is around the clock. My ideas are fresh, but they need research and development.
Studio One is a television show produced by students at the University of North Dakota.
You can be a part of the graphics team, the marketing team, news team, programming team, production team.
Training never ends.
You get to produce gas, you get to do the reporting side of it.
It's really worth the experience. You will not regret it. Tune in next week on Studio One. We'll show you a group of moms who get together for one common purpose. Plus, we'll have other news and entertainment stories for you.
We're going to leave you now with pictures of kids discovering the wonderful world of science. From all of us here at Studio One, have a great week.